this is Erin Binema recording from Waterloo, Ontario for my book review on Collapse: How Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed by Jared Diamond. This book is a follow-up to his Pulitzer Prize-winning book Guns, Germs, and Steel, and it is basically a archaeological historical account of different societies and how they have determined their own success or failure. He takes us through modern history, ancient history, and looks at the different elements and tries to break down which specific actions caused the success or failure of the society. Now, first, I must clarify what Diamond means by collapse. He defines collapse as a drastic decrease in human population size and/or political, economical, social complexity over a considerable area for an extended time. Basically, this is a drastic form of decline. Now, there are many different types of collapses. You could expand it into, let's say, cultural collapse, political collapse, social collapse. But this book specifically deals with the subject of environmentally caused collapses. So he kind of dissects this into 5 different factors. And the following factors are environmental damage, climate change, hostile neighbors, friendly trade partners, and the final one, which he weighs very heavily, society's response to its environmental problems. The majority of this book is comprised of different societal accounts and goes through the evidence that has been found through archaeological digs or written histories in order to find out which of these 5 factors led to its success or failure. In the following slides, I will summarize a few of the case studies that Diamond presents in his books. And I just ask that you think about these 5 factors as I go through the case studies and try to decide which ones are the most important towards the society's success or failure. The Vikings began their exploration of the world around 793 AD. They sailed across the ocean and bumped into a large expanse of land that they decided to call Greenland. Now, upon first arrival, Greenland looked quite comparable to Norway. The climate was good. It looked like there was a lot of potential for settlement. So they decided to establish the western and the eastern settlement on the tip of Greenland. Now, this soon changed. The climate was mild on arrival, and before they knew it, it plunged into a deep cold that they were not prepared for. The Norse impact on the environment was very damaging. From what looked like an environment that was close to Norway was actually a lot more fragile. They cut down a lot of the forests for their settlements and also brought over sheep and cows from Norway in order to establish a pastoral economy, which resulted in overgrazing and a lot of soil erosion. There was also Inuit living on the island, in which they had bad relationships with, and after a few unfriendly contacts with them, completely decided to write them off as something that could be helpful in their settlement. Now, the Norse's fatal flaw was a very conservative outlook. They maintained a Norwegian cuisine that was rich in dairy, mutton, and beef, and they actually refused to eat fish. Even though they were surrounded by ocean, they held this Eurocentric attitude that the fish was a demeaning or a kind of an icky cuisine. I guess it could be comparable to North Americans not wanting to eat bugs, even though they're rich in protein. All in all, from discovery to abandonment, the Norse Vikings exhausted all of the resources in Greenland in about 450 years. Those who didn't succumb to hunger or the cold retreated back to Norway. If you look at the picture above the map, that is one of the churches that is still standing from the Viking period in Greenland. It is one of the few visual pieces of evidence left there from settlement. The rest were abandoned a long time ago and have since fallen. The next case study is actually one of great success in the ancient world. Due to successful bottom-up management, people have been farming and living in the highlands of New Guinea for about 46,000 years. Bottom-up management is where people work together to solve their own problems. New Guinea is a small island just off the northern coast of Australia, and it is a small area in which people know what is going on around the island and can understand the environmental impact that each of their individual actions has because it is such a small island. The Tikopia people overcame incredible feats with their agriculture and sustainable farming. The cliffs are very high and there are frequently huge monsoons and earthquakes which damage the soil, and also they face problems of overpopulation. Therefore, land cannot be wasted and must be used to its maximum. Using very specific agricultural techniques such as terracing and ditches, fertilization, mulching, and crop rotation, they were able to conserve their land and also feed the large population. They also worked on measures of preventing overpopulation by actually taking individual responsibility to maintain responsible family sizes through ancient birth control methods, and they were able to feed themselves sustainably and keep a stable, non-increasing population, which maintained the land of their very small island and therefore maintained their own survival. The Tikopia people are a great example of bottom-up management because there was not an overseeing body that accomplished this, but rather by nurturing a culture of responsibility and sustainability, they were able to survive and thrive and become a successful society for thousands and thousands of years to come. The next case study that I'm going to talk about is the Dominican Republic and Haiti, which is a really interesting example that really illustrates the principle that Diamond is making in his book, that the protection and preservation of the environment is key to the survival and well-being of the society which inhabits it. Just looking at this picture of the border between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, it is clear that they've taken different approaches to the environment. Haiti has experienced extreme deforestation, whereas the Dominican Republic has focused on its reforestation and has healthy forests now. Haiti has experienced extreme social problems and social strife. They have become one of the most poor countries in the world, whereas the Dominican Republic is now a tropical destination for many tourists. One of the reasons for this is Haiti is affected greatly by climate change. They have become vulnerable to hurricanes, something that has been really difficult for them to overcome because it is beyond their control. Every time their country is ravaged by a hurricane, it is really difficult to recover from that. However, the most important factor in explaining the difference between Haiti and the Dominican Republic is that the Dominican Republic's leadership paid attention to preserving the environment and therefore was better able to support the society within it. Even though these two countries are on the exact same island and have very similar environments, their people live completely differently. And that is the very root of what Diamond is trying to say, that the environment is key to a successful society. So the question I asked you at the beginning of these case studies was, which of the 5 points framework of possibly contributing factors to environmental collapse best represented these case studies? Environmental damage, climate change, hostile neighbors, friendly trade partners, or society's response to its environmental problems. And through these case studies, I hope what you realize is that it's not a single factor that makes these societies collapse or succeed. Rather, it's the interaction of these elements and the pushing and the pulling of each of these that really cause societal collapse. This is not a one factor framework, but rather it's an interplay of all these different things coming together. The next question I want to ask of you is, based on these case studies and the factors that we looked at, is our society heading towards collapse or success? And specifically, how do the oil sands push us either which way? Are the oil sands buying time from our civilization? So the 5 factors that the oil sands might be pushing on: environmental damage. Clearly, extracting bitumen from the oil sands is extremely resource intensive and leaves a lot of pollution and toxic elements in our environment, such as tailing ponds, destroyed wetlands, air quality impacts, the degradation of wetlands, the excessive use of fresh water, and the contamination of our water systems, and even the failure of reclamation and cleanup. Climate change. The greenhouse gas emissions for oil sand extraction and processing are significantly larger than that for conventional crude oil. So the emissions are warming up our environment and enhancing the greenhouse effect. Also, the way in which we burn these fuels with our cars is contributing to these greenhouse gas emissions. Hostile neighbors. Half of Canadians still rely on insecure foreign oil from the Middle East and OPEC, which leaves us vulnerable if their prices rise or if they decide not to export to us. We are relying on these trade deals and these agreements, which could easily fall through. Friendly trade partners. We export much of our bitumen to the US, which incentivizes policies of full-scale liquidation for global interests. Our governments know that they can get a lot of money for this oil, and they are therefore motivated to extract it as fast as they can and sell it. And most importantly, what is our society's response to these environmental problems caused by the oil sands? In my opinion, we still do not have a comprehensive plan for the oil sands. Therefore, it is not clear what our societal response is. It is painfully difficult to decide whether to abandon some of one's core values when they seem to be becoming incompatible with survival. A crux of success or failure as a society is to know which core values to discard and replace with new values when time changes. Jared Diamond. This quote shows that cultural values and societal norms are very difficult to change, but very instrumental to a society's success or failure. He makes clear that collapse is variable. It's about a society's action that determines collapse. It's not inevitable or determined, it's about action and response. One of the questions that he raises is, what was the Easter Islander thinking as he cut down the last tree? Now, the Easter Islanders were a society that eventually all starved and died off because of their extreme deforestation. So what we're really asking is, why do societies do things that hurt them? Why are we still allowing industry to dump tailings into our river basins? Why are we still driving to work when we know that the environment is still warming? Why are we flying to Mexico every February when we know how carbon intensive airplanes are? And there's a few explanations that Diamond gives for this. Perhaps a society fails to anticipate a problem, or they fail to perceive a problem, or they fail to try to solve it, or they fail when trying to solve it. So one of the questions that this provokes is, in which areas are we failing with the oil sands? What values should we be discarding and replacing as time is changing? And as we move along, are we anticipating the problems? Are we perceiving the problems? Are we trying to solve it, or are we failing to solve it? In this slide, I have come up with a few things why I think we are hurting ourselves as a society. First of all, we get away with waste when the economy is good. We become attached to a certain lifestyle. I think that one of the reasons why we've become so irresponsible with the oil sands is that we are so attached to a lifestyle that is fueled by fossil fuels, and we have become used to certain luxuries that are unsustainable behavior. And once you get attached to that, it's really hard to move away. And a message of conservatism is not one that people like to hear or like to take action on. Another reason is that people tend towards time discounting. We tend to value our lives now more than our survival in the future. So therefore, we put less value on things like the oil sands than we should, and we tend to extract more of them now rather than save them for the future. People also believe that we need to balance the economy with the environment. You hear this argument often, and I think we have forgotten how deeply rooted the economy is in the environment. It is an important reminder that protecting the environment and preserving it for our future is protecting the economy as well. Another reason why we hurt ourselves is because we hold this infallible trust that technology can save us. We make the mess first and then wait for the technology to come and help us out of it. And I think that there is a certain limit to technology, and Diamond's book shows that as societies collapse, that even though they were extremely resourceful and looked at all the different technologies they could develop, once the environment was damaged beyond saving, there was no technology that could save their society from collapsing. The good news is that not everything is doom and gloom, and our society has not collapsed yet, so there is still time for action to place us on the successful side of history. Um, One of the most interesting things that we are going through right now is a shift towards the green economy. Consumers and businesses are turning towards products that care about the sustainability and the management of the resources in which they are made. For example, the Marine Stewardship Council makes sure that fisheries are harvesting from populations that are being maintained. Um, Other products like recycled paper and certain lifestyle choices that people are making, such as biking more often or going waste free, all contribute to this cultural attitude of environmental care and preservation. Um, One of the most important pieces that Jared Diamond puts into this book is the idea that we now possess knowledge that bridges the expanses of both time and space. Because of this, we face the extreme, unique opportunity to learn from both modern and ancient societies simultaneously in order to make more societal preserving decisions. Diamond calls himself cautiously optimistic simply because of this extreme knowledge that we now have. For example, if Alberta was trying to make a decision about royalties, they could talk to Norway and see what they've done with their oil revenue, and they could go through the history book and look at Easter Island and see how how important resource management is. They could look at Australia's mining policies. The information is absolutely endless, and with this knowledge and with the proper action, then these are the antidotes to collapse. And we possess both. So we can be optimistic because we have both of the pieces. They just need to be put together and put forth in order to make our society successful. Jeff Diamond writes, globalization makes it impossible for modern societies to collapse in isolation. We are also the first to enjoy the opportunity of learning quickly from developments in society. Knowledge and action is paramount to preventing failure and should incentivize a scaling back of consumption and the slowing down of resource extraction. Depleting resources should be avoided at all costs, not in the name of wealth, but simply as a matter of survival. And that concludes my presentation on the book Collapse by Jared Diamond. Thank you so much for listening and for accommodating my learning from afar. If everything works out technology-wise, I should be on Skype to answer some questions. Thank you so much.